and nerdy.
Yeah. I love that show.
Hello.
Welcome to Law and Omen. Fifth time. My name's Kristin.
My name's Chanelle.
And we're drinking champagne. Woo! They're in dragon goblets, so they don't really make a sound. We're drinking champagne because Chanelle's finished at her old job and started a new job. Yeah. And she got a new cat.
Oh, very unexpectedly.
Some years celebrate.
Ooh, and I'm moving soon.
That too. Could be.
We're drinking in preparation for that.
Yeah. We won't stop until you've moved.
Not even during the day.
Put on like a wine bra and just carry on.
Fill it with whiskey.
Oh gosh, gross.
And that would be gross.
Warm.
Warm.
Maybe once it's supposed to, what is that, like a bourbon? I don't know.
Cognac?
I don't know.
I think the only alcohol that you can drink warm is like a blue vine.
What?
Spice red wine.
The malt.
Yes.
Mulled wine.
Mulled wine.
Yes, like in My Dad with the Planner.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Mind the pines.
I was just listening to that on the way again.
You've been here for like 5 minutes and my brain just can't anymore.
I don't know what that says about me and my influence.
I don't know either. I just realised this room is going to be awful in summer. Oh, we can't even put fans on in summer because it's going to make so much noise.
We'll just have to get ice packs or something.
Yeah.
Freeze our bras.
I was thinking the same thing.
Wine bra, but full of ice.
Yeah, like slushy. Oh no, ouch, my nipples hurt.
Just thinking of it. I nearly tripped on the strawberry.
Now that's true crap.
Remember those jellies that you got in those little plastic containers that you used to cut?
Oh, I never ate those. I was always so scared I was going to die.
My grandma always told me, you can't eat them just like that. You have to scoop them out.
Yeah. But I'm not really a fan of jelly.
No, so I eat those jellies, but I don't eat like normal jelly. I have a bad experience.
I just have a bad experience with you get like side pieces and it's like hard and then I can't.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
They like it hardens around the sides, but like in trifle it's nice.
I don't eat trifle.
Oh, people problems.
I think that's one of the things that I actually like actively despise.
No, I'm used to my mom making it like every Christmas.
I think for me it's too many flavors that I can't like.
You put like popcorn and sugar stuff together. How is a trifle too many flavors?
That's just salty and sweet. Trifle, but I don't like liquor soaked anything.
Oh, my mom never put liquor in it.
Oh, yeah. That was just I still want people. Okay. But I don't like the sponginess and the creaminess, and I don't like custard that much either. So I thought I was not a picky eater. But no, I don't. I'm not. It's just trifle.
You trifle. So sorry.
It's the champagne.
Yeah, I was just going to say one glass.
You know what? The one, literally, and the strawberry that nearly choked me today. Oh, I hear this creak so many times.
Oh, yeah. Terrible. Yeah, one day we'll have like nice couchy sit up.
That's the chair. If anyone hears a weird squeak, I'm just going to keep that in specifically for that. If you ever hear a weird squeak, the chair, not my butt.
Yeah, or my butt.
Well, technically it is my butt. But
yeah, and then sometimes you can't cut it out because if he's saying a word.
Exactly.
Like,
there is just sometimes like random noises.
Yeah, like I hear sounds and I literally play it on the slow-mo thing and try at different speeds and I'm like, is that a voice? Or is that like a sound?
I just cut it out. I'm not investigating. I'm not here to do ghost hunter shit.
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, let me say it for the benefit of the tape too. When I was in the same room as my boyfriend, our Alexa just randomly went off and said, "Hello there, it's so nice to see you again," which was disgusting. Because
where is it?
In the lounge by the TV.
Okay, not yet.
No, and like no one was in there, not even a cat. Everyone was just like out of that room, and Bass and I just looked at each other like, "What's up?"
That is
creepy.
Has she ever said something like that when you first activated her?
No, but that's so random.
That's a very random thing to say.
Yeah, she's gone off like once or twice, but it's like just like the random, I don't know, or whatever. But this was like a full sentence of greeting. It's like, ooh, just said hello to you.
No, I don't like that.
No.
The worst would be if you just like stop. Okay, I'll play.
Yeah, like I found you singing the Whisper song to me and I cut it out. I just literally made a folder called bloopers and I put it in there.
I forgot about that actually.
It was great. I honestly was expecting you to like fart or something. You like didn't realize like, oh shit, it's still recording. That's what I thought it was. Okay. Before you started, did you see about the Debbie?
I did. I started watching dash cams, not the dash cams, the police cams, but they have to body cams. There we go. Dash cams, like the bodies, yeah. I started watching the body cams on August 18th, the 18th of August. I'm American. It was the 18th of August. They were pulled over by the police because someone who had driven behind them had phoned the police stating that there was a domestic violence happening in front of them. The guy, her boyfriend, but he's also now missing, which is it, but I think he's hiding. Oh, yeah. He hit her or something to that effect and shoved her or something like that, and then they got in the car and sped off, whatever, and they pulled them over. And she was in a state of panic. She was crying. She was apologizing a lot, which is also not a great sign, because it might mean he might be emotionally abusive. He just seemed so chill and cracking jokes with the officers, and he had a couple of scratches on his hand and stuff. And Joanna, she hit him with her phone. How the fuck did a phone with scratches and rings and stuff like that?
So what did you do to cause her to have to fight you?
There was a stage where she was sitting in the police officer's car because they're separated them, obviously. And she said, they asked her, did you hit him? And she said, no, she never hit him. But he grabbed her like here, by the cheeks. And I don't know.
Oh, it's so sad that she was there, with police officers, and then
it's so sad. Like it's so difficult watching, the last moments of her life basically unfold. It reminds me so much of the Chanelle case, like I said. It's not exactly the same, but the same way in which it unfolded, that same feeling. Because I remember when it first happened, I watched the body cam video of Chris Watts in his house. Like, have you watched that Netflix doc? So I watched that, like, before they knew it was him. I was still working at when it happened. I remember watching the body cam, like it's him. I know it's him. Like, fucking arrest him now. Obviously it's him. And I just get the same feeling from this guy, even though he has, especially since he has refused to talk to the police and now he's quote unquote missing. Is he really missing?
You guys were in the wilderness and she just disappears and
you go back, you drop the car off, you go to your house, you don't what?
It's not bad. No. I hope they can just prove it and catch him and just...
Me too. I feel so sad for a family. And especially now, since they haven't, I don't think they've 100% identified the body yet, but the police think, like they've identified people with similar features.
And how many 22-year-old white blonde girls are in the woods?
A lot.
Okay, never mind.
I also hope that they can get some closure. It's so sad.
And it's only going to get worse, isn't it, when you start a story?
Yeah, it is.
Alright.
Shall we start?
Yeah, let's do it.
Disclaimer, first of all, before I even mention what I'm going to do. I mean no harm or ill will toward the people I speak about. This is a report on the information that I could compile about the case, and all my resources will be listed in the show notes. So today I'm going to cover the Cradock Fall.
Never heard of them.
At the end, I also say I was so sad that I didn't know about them, especially like if you hear what they were about and who they were as people and what they did for their community and stuff like that. So the Cradock Fall consists of Matthew Koniwe, Port Nelata, Sparrow Mkonto, and Selo Mpauli. And it takes place in 1985 during apartheid.
Okay.
So
wait, 85.
Okay. So in apartheid. Long time ago, but also not that long ago, When I was researching, it really hit home how this isn't that long ago. Apartheid wasn't that long ago, and everyone It says, oh, people must just get over apartheid. And it wasn't that long ago.
My sister and my boyfriend had just been born like 2-3 years before that. The story, like 82 and 83.
Yeah.
So it's not that long.
And it's
their lifetimes.
Exactly. It's still within this generation, you know what I mean?
Like it only ended in 94, so I was like in grade 4 then. It's so recent.
Yeah, well, that was before my time. Jeez, 2 years. I was born 2 years after apartheid, but
so young. At least you weren't born in like the 2000s, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So Matthew Goniwe was born on the 27th of December 1947. He was the youngest of 8 children, and his parents were farm labourers. They lived in Emakebeni section of the old Cradock Eastern Cape Township, that area. They later had to relocate to, if I say this wrong, I'm sorry, Ngalile Township in 1962 because the previous township was demolished through the Group Areas Act. This was the title of 3 acts in the South African Parliament passed under the apartheid regime, and the act assigns different residential and business sections in urban areas to different racial groups. And what usually happened is that the people of colour got the cuck areas, no trees were planted, and that's still something that townships and poorer communities suffer from today. You see, if you look at how green and how many trees are planted in more usually white, wealthier areas in comparison to township areas and poorer communities.
That's actually a really good point. I never really paid attention to.
And also that contributes to purity of air, air quality, kids being able to climb trees and play around in parks and whatever. So,
and trees also just bring like a nice
joy. Exactly. Trees are like ancient. You know, there's something calming about I don't know, plants in general, but especially trees. Like I don't know, I've always loved trees. Okay, so he joined the African National Congress in 1958, and he's only 11 at this point.
Okay.
And this is also when I realized that so many of the freedom fighters and the people that were, not all obviously, but a lot of these people were very young when they started their activism and stuff like that. In 1960, he joined the local Communist Party and would attend underground political classes. And he was originally introduced to politics by his older brother. He's 13 and he's taking like underground political classes. Yeah.
You must really be sick of the way life is to do that at that age.
Exactly. After the trick, he became a member of the Moral Regeneration Movement, and this was an organization that aimed to instill morality amongst young people.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
that sounds great.
Yeah. Matthew obtained his teacher's diploma from Fort Hare University, majoring in mathematics, education, physics, and chemistry.
Jeez. Didn't Talib go to Fort Hare?
Yes. And Leandre. And before this, you didn't even hear it.
Yeah,
never even heard of it. I heard
that's just all the stories from there.
Yeah, it is weird.
Wow, so he was really going for it.
Wow. Definitely. He taught maths and science at Cradock Bantu Secondary after that, and he wanted to pursue a Bachelor of Science degree at Fort Hare, but he was unable to do so because they said the spaces were reserved for newly graduated high school students. I don't get that. He started teaching at Holomisa High School at Kwanduli at Pitai Village. Okay. Again, I'm sorry for how I pronounce these things. I did try and Google some of them, but granted I forgot some as well.
And you also got the story with the most names in all.
So many names. There's so many names of places. He helped renovate the building as it was situated in a dilapidated church. This is the high school that he taught at. He also established a feeding scheme, school choir, debating society, as well as a boxing, rugby, and soccer club. Wow. He's just an all-around pillar of the community in the best way possible. Not political. If you listen to him, that's why we drink. You know what we're speaking about, but he's not political.
Okay, good. Because I heard that and I was like, please no, he's doing so well.
No, he's actually a pillar that keeps the community stable.
I wish there were more people.
In 1975, he married, and his wife would later qualify as a social worker. They had 2 children together. Matthew Goniwe established a Marxist cell, a reading group that studies Marxism and communism. And then I got a quote. Marxism is a social, political, and economic philosophy named after Karl Marx. It examines the effect of capitalism on labor, productivity, and economic development, and argues for a worker revolution to overturn capitalism in favor of communism. Marxism posits that the struggle between social classes, specifically between capitalists and the workers, defines economic relations in a capitalist economy and will inevitably lead to revolutionary communism.
I mean, I studied politics for like a year at university, and all I remember is what Karl Marx looks like. I just remember the beard. I didn't remember any of that.
Oh, you definitely have a visual brain.
Well, I also had to look at that textbook so much.
Oh, true. They would go on to establish these cells at the University of Fort Hare and in towns including King Williamstown. In 1976, he would be arrested and charged under the Suppression of Communism Act, number 44 of 1950, after one of the members had given information on the underground group to police. This act I mentioned banned the South African Communist Party and gave the authority to ban publications that promoted communism. So there's a lot of suppression of free think and stuff like that in
not surprised that here. Yeah, but that seems to be globally suppression of communism.
Yes.
It seems to happen everywhere.
Yeah, so I wonder why.
Yeah.
So while Matthew was in Mthatha prison, he was sentenced to 4 years. He studied and obtained his Bachelor of Arts degree through the University of South Africa. He majored in political science and education. Again.
I wish people could see the look of my face there.
Okay. Maybe you major in teaching that specific thing.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's
maybe.
I
assume so. I don't plan on teaching. Which is, everybody should thank God for that. He was released in 1981. In 1983, he became the principal of Sam Nahale Secondary in Lingilili. Fort Clotter, like I said, I'll go through a little bit of a history of each of them.
So it's fort, like a fort.
Fort, yeah, fort. Yeah, it's also spelled F-O-R-T.
Okay.
Not fort.
Yeah.
Or fort, oh yeah, I fought you. Fort Clotter was born on the 5th of November 1956. He completed his secondary teacher's diploma at Lennox Sebe Teachers College, now called Griffith Mazenge College. He majored in accounting, business economics, and Afrikaans.
Oh, these are really smart dudes.
So smart, so intelligent.
I'm going to be angry, aren't I?
Yeah, I was. You're still going to be angry. Yeah. Fort was the grandson of James Clotter, one of the founding members of the South African Native National Congress. James Clotter also served as Secretary General from 1936 to 1949. So, along with some teachers he worked with at Dimbaze High School in 1979, formed a burial society that served as an underground cell. I think it was kind of a ruse.
Okay.
Yeah. He too would be arrested for his political activities in 1980 and would be detained for a month. He moved on to also start teaching at Sam Nahale Secondary in 1981, where he met Matthew. Was born on the 25th of May 1949. He was also born in Emakubeni, like Matthew Goniwe, and they actually grew up together. They were childhood friends. And he later moved to Lingalile to a section called Tap Tap. I can say that. His grandfather was a politician who worked closely with James Clotter. He also studied teaching and majored in Afrikaans and history at Lovedale College. His teaching career kicked off in 1974 at Tembalala Bantu High School in King Williamstown. He later became a boarding master here as well. During his time there, in 1975, the hostel students went on a food strike demanding better quality food. The student leaders were arrested and Siselu was in court to show his support. From there, he went on to become the principal of Archie Belile Secondary, and it is said that he had to make this move due to harassment by the Ciskei government. There was a stay-away strike at the school where students were demanding proper representation in the student council, as well as wanting equal education for all races in South Africa, which is not too much to ask. It's really not.
some decent food too.
Exactly, for boarding school people.
Come on.
During this demonstration, there were pupils who were assaulted by the police, and Sisulu took the injured to a nearby clinic, and then he was arrested for doing that. Why?
If you breathe, I suppose, in those days.
Yeah, if you breathe and you were black or not white.
This is a white breathing area. What are you doing?
He moved to become principal of Bongolevutu Township High School in Oudtshoorn, where he met and married Kumbisilelo Zonke, and they had 2 children. He would attend the launch of the United Democratic Front as a part of the Oudtshoorn delegation. He also opened his home to become the operations center for struggle advancement in the Southern Cape region. He was a part of a committee that started a newspaper called Saamstaan, which means Stand Together, where they informed the public about political events in South Africa. That was very cool. Yeah. I think it was also like a local thing.
Yeah.
Apparently, he might also have survived an arson attack in his office. Sparrow Mkonto was born on the 24th of December, 1951, also in the Lingile township in Cradock. Matthew Koniwe was actually his teacher, but due to his financial circumstances, Sparrow had to leave school after he passed his junior secondary certificate, and he went on to become a railway worker. He established a soccer club in his community. In 1983, security police would conspire with his employers to get them to fire him, and they did fire him on the grounds that he was a communist and arranged political get-togethers during work hours.
Okay.
So all 4 of these young men were political activists. When the Cradock Youth Association, or Cradock, why would the acronym be more difficult to say? Matthew was elected as its first chairperson and fought as its secretary.
Wait, you mean the dude fought?
Yes.
Oh, so he didn't fight as a secretary. Okay,
no.
I want to make sure. Okay, so they're working together.
Yeah, they're working together. In 1983, the organization wanted the apartheid government to lower the unfair rental system that was proposed by the East Cape Administration Board. I don't know why it's not Eastern Cape, it's not East Cape. The Cradock Residents Association was formed after Matthew called a mass meeting in the community to discuss how they would handle this proposal. They won the fight after applying enough pressure, and on the 20th of August 1983, the United Democratic Front, or UDF, launched. They were an anti-apartheid body that incorporated many anti-apartheid organizations, and naturally, Cradora became affiliated with it. So, Cradoya is the Cradock Youth Association, and Cradora is the Cradock Residents Association. On the 18th of October 1983, the security police once again got involved. I think security police were probably like a branch of police, I don't know, in apartheid.
Yeah.
But I've never heard of them.
Yeah.
This time by instructing the Department of Education to transfer Matthew out of Cradock. So I think he was causing too much of a stir there. He was probably uniting the people a little bit too much for their liking, and they wanted him out of there.
Okay.
They offered him a principal position in Graafrenet, but he said no. I think he must have been dismissed because he then applied for an ordinary teacher's position in Cradock, but his application was turned down. So in November of 1983, the Department of Education sent him a telegram to inform him of his transfer to Graafrenet. So they just decided this is what you're going to do. He was set to start on the 1st of January. On the 1st of January 1984. There was a Cradoya meeting that was attended by about 2,000 people, and they all encouraged him to stay and not to go. So he stayed. The Department of Education told him that he, quote-unquote, dismissed himself, and he was officially fired on the 27th of January 1983. This had a domino effect, which started a school boycott in Cradock on the 3rd of February 1984. The boycott spread to nearby areas, and on the 11th of March, 4,236 students had joined the movement, and it lasted for 15 months, making it the longest school boycott in history.
Jeez, that's a long time.
It is a very long time. I talk about this again later. I mentioned it again. Matthew and Ford's political relationship made them definite targets for the security police, and they wanted to find a way to eliminate or silence them. On the 24th of March 1984, the local community would ban all Cradock and Cradock gatherings. This caused riots in the community and them throwing stones and stuff like that. Or obviously, like, what other means of the government's not listening to you and they don't care about your rights. The only way you're gonna get their attention is by doing something drastic, So you force them to like result to that to get the attention. The former finance minister Barend du Plessis brought forth this idea of wanting to quote unquote remove the two men. At a State Secretary Council meeting on the 19th of March, 1984, he referred to Matthew and Ford when he said, okay, I'm going to read this in Afrikaans because that's what he said, and then I'll just translate into English. In Cradock is daar 2 oud onderwysers wat as agitators optree. Dit sal goed wees as hulle verwyder kon word. So this translates to, in Cradock there are 2 ex-teachers who are acting as agitators, and it would be good if they could be removed. Clotter and Matthew would be arrested on the 31st of March 1984. Also detained for 2 days earlier, the head boy of Lingile High School, Zile Donald Madoda Jacobs, and also a leader in both Cradock and COSAS, Congress of South African Students. On the same day, Louis Legrandsie, Minister of Law and Order, banned all meetings for 3 months. So all of their Cradock meetings. This escalated the riots to stoning homes, and petrol bombs were also being used. Don't agree, but I understand. Yes. On the 27th of May, police and the South African Defence Force blocked off the township to search for public violence suspects. And I'm sure they just probably anyone. In June 1984, Matthew, his nephew, Ford, and Jacobs were still being detained, and they were listed as a potential threat under the Internal Security Act. During this time, Ford's wife was harassed by police and threatened with eviction from her home, and the little shop she had to support her family and stuff was vandalized. Of course. Lingile Township was tear-gassed by the police on the 15th of June 1984. And this led to the community boycotting white-owned businesses on the 16th of June, on the anniversary of the Soweto uprising.
I was just about to say, isn't that like... So that was something that happened before that.
In August, there was a 7-day boycott of white-owned businesses and to protest the detainment of the leaders. They were eventually released on the 10th of October 1984. Matthew called for a boycott named, or came to be known as Black Christmas, in December. In an article in the Los Angeles Times, it said, I don't like how they addressing people, but anyway, blacks, the local consumer boycott committees have decreed on not to do their Christmas shopping in white-owned stores, but not to hold the usual pop music concerts, choir competitions, beauty contests, and community festivals, and are not to have big holiday celebrations even at home. One aim is to force white merchants who have been hoping for a good Christmas season to support the call by blacks for an end to the 5-month-old state of emergency and for the withdrawal of white troops from the black townships. It was a successful boycott, although in the same article it also said that goods bought at white stores are seized, according to Soweto residents, and the purchasers are frequently beaten by the youths, mostly students in their teens. Stories are told of a week's food being thrown into the dirt, of women being made to drink cooking oil and eat bars of soap that they bought in town, of men being stripped out of their new suits, then watching them shredded by razors. So in 1985, Matthew and others appealed to the community to stop the violence. So in my opinion, there's always going to be people that take things too far.
Yeah, of course.
Like what started out as a good movement it's always bound to be taken too far by people who are stupid.
There's always those too few, like 2 or 3 that just push
the boundaries. But I don't think that they must be the indicator of what the group is standing for. Cradock and the Department of Education had many meetings to try and get Matthew reinstated. They eventually agreed to meet Matthew in Cradock, where he told them that he wanted the school boycott to come to an end. Matthew asked the senior Department of Education official, De Beer, to help him get permission for a public meeting because that was still being banned. De Beer did that, and the meeting was held on Easter Monday. 15 months, that's what I stated earlier, 15 months after the boycott started, Matthew said that children were still back to school. Matthew, they did. So, next section. Matthew's influence in the township, this is just a whole bunch of things that he's achieved, or that they've achieved, really. And it's sad that someone has achieved so much and had the potential to change, or they did change. He did change a lot and was very instrumental in, I think, a lot of movements that gained traction after this. Matthew's influence in the township led to the formation of street committees where 17,000 residents were divided into 7 zones. Around 40 activists were assigned to each zone, and they would have meetings to elect officials. Each household could vote for their own street representative, and this was eventually called the G Plan or Gorniwe's Plan. So, Matthew's plan. In June 1985, the Cradock Security Police Chief, Major Eric Winter, increased surveillance over Matthew, his cousin Mbolelo, Fort, and Jacobs. So Jacobs, once again, just reminding everyone, it's that, the head one. Yeah, don't know why I keep reminding, but I kept forgetting. Yeah, I kept forgetting who the hell Jacobs was.
I just remember Jacobs because he had 4 names and 2 of them were not very English and 2 were very English. Yes. It was what?
Yeah, Donald and Jacobs.
Yeah.
Mbolelo was quoted saying, "We were the 4 targeted people of Cradock." So in a sense, one can say that is the legit Cradock 4 as targeted by the state at the time. On the 27th of June 1985, Matthew Gorniwe, Fort Clotter, Sparrow Mponto, and Selo Mpauli left to go to Cradock, formerly known as Port Elizabeth, around 10 a.m. Matthew was the UDF rural organizer in Karoo, and they were going to a weekly management meeting. So that's the United Democratic Forum. Their vehicle was spotted by the police around lunchtime. Matthew attended the meetings with his fellow activists, and his last meeting was at the house of UDF activist Michael Kutsia. This finished around 9 o'clock in the evening, and a fellow UDF member, Derek Swartz, invited Matthew to stay over the night, but Matthew wanted to spend time with his family, so he started his way back at around 10 minutes past 9. The 4 men were intercepted by a police roadblock just outside of Cradock. The bodies of Sparrow and Cicelu were found not long afterwards in different areas near Blue Water Bay, Cradock. Matthew and Fort's bodies were found some days later in Sea Scrub Bushland near Blue Water Bay, and this suggests that they could have been taken somewhere for interrogation and murdered at a later stage. The bodies were all badly assaulted and burnt.
Jeez.
They were buried in Cradock on the 20th of July 1985 at a big political funeral. Well, they had a big political funeral. Thousands would attend. I know that O.R. Tambo was there.
That's so weird because I just think the airport. I forgot he was a real person at stage.
And there's a whole bunch of other people there as well. The South African government denied any involvement in the murders.
Sure.
However, a copy of a secret military signal message issuing their death warrant was anonymously sent to the Transkei's Minister of Defense, Major General Bantu Olomisa, who forwarded the document to the Transkei's Director of Military Intelligence in early June of 1985. The document proposed the permanent removal of Matthew Gorniwe, Fort Clotter, and Matthew's cousin Mbolelo from the community. And so, in 1987, a 2-year inquest into the death of the Cradock 4 began. It actually consisted of 4 inquests. Because they were so closely related, they were conducted under one inquest. Just if anyone doesn't know what an inquest is an inquiry into the circumstances surrounding a death. The purpose of the inquest is to find out who the deceased person was and how, when, and where they died, and to provide details needed for their death to be registered. But it's not a trial. At the end, on the 22nd of February 1989, the magistrate found that the 4 men had been killed by, quote-unquote, unknown persons. In 1992, a second inquest was called for by ex-President F.W. de Klerk after the New Nation newspaper disclosed that top-secret military signal. They posted it. Yes.
And FW, right?
Yeah.
Just because I've not heard anyone say F.W. de Klerk. It's like, no, but I know it is. It's just like one letter, and it's like, what?
And I always feel weird saying people saying FW. That seems like such a long thing to say.
Yeah.
FW.
I forget how Afrikaans you are sometimes.
So, in 1992, a second inquest was called for by ex-President F.W. de Klerk after the New Nation newspaper disclosed that that top-secret military signal for calling for the permanent removal of Matthew Fort and Matthew's cousin, Mbabelo. This inquest began on the 29th of March. This inquest began on the 29th of March. I'm not sure when. I think it's 1993 or 1992.
But the date's what, 10093?
I don't know what I did. Honestly, this was obviously late at night.
Maybe James typed that.
Maybe James, maybe.
Always blame the cats.
And it lasted 18 months in terms of the inquest amendment. So I think they amended it and it can't be so long. Although no individuals were named in the verdict, Judge Neville Zietsman found the security forces responsible for the deaths. So now no one was named, but now there's like, okay, no, it was the police.
Yeah.
In 1999, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission denied that amnesty would be granted to those involved in the murder. The men responsible were former security branch head Harold Snyman, Eric Alexander Taylor, Gerardus Johannes Lotz, Nicolaas Janse van Rensburg, Johan van Zyl, and Hermanus Barend du Plessis. Colonel, I hate the way Colonel is spelled, by the way.
Colonel.
I know how many times when I was younger I said Colonel. I never understood. Or I never understood people who went to KFC and got a Colonel burger because I was like, I can't see the Colonel burger anyway.
Like, your menu is broken.
Okay. Former Block Blast Commander.
Commander. You are like the most American Afrikaans person I've ever met today.
That's a very bad combination. Okay, so Colonel Snyman had given the orders. Former Block Blast Commander, I don't know what Block Blast is. Anyway, Eugene de Kock was the only one who was granted amnesty for knowledge of the murders he was not directly involved. If you know about the murders, you're involved. Like,
anyway, you had a chance to stop it.
Exactly.
You told someone.
Exactly.
So you're as guilty.
Exactly. In my opinion, definitely. So, again, in my opinion, this really isn't good enough because no one was officially charged.
Yeah.
Like, no one faced jail time, no one went through a trial, and and the families are still waiting for justice. Many of them passing without ever seeing justice take place. Yeah, I watched a video, and I can't remember who the man was. Like, I know he was involved, but I can't remember which one of the Afrikaans names it was. And he said they were killed because they were political threats. And they were given, I think they were given instructions to stab them to death.
Jeez.
But then, somewhere along the way, I think one of them fought or something like that, and they were shot. Okay. He ended up shooting him in the head. Yeah, and then also he, years later, and I'm not sure if it was a part of this Truth and Reconciliation Act, but I don't think it was, he basically asked for forgiveness from the family, and the woman, I don't know which one of which family it was, but she said she can't forgive him.
Yeah.
How does he expect to stand in front of her after all these years? Justice has not been done, and saying sorry is not enough.
Yeah.
And I fully agree.
Yeah, I mean, why were their bodies burnt? You're not addressing that. You told to stab them, which is bad enough, but they were shot and burnt.
I don't know. I think they were burnt as well. Like, they were trying to make it look like a vigilante killing. So,
like a cover up.
Yes. So,
but still, that's desecration of the body after you've murdered them.
The most frustrating part is that no one is seen in the inside of a prison cell.
Yeah. But if it was the other way around, and some black men killed some white people, they would be persecuted fully.
Guarantee it.
Which is so unfair.
Yeah, so the best thing, I guess, that they could do, apparently, is that the Cradock 4 has a gardens of remembrance, a memorial in Cradock's Ngele township, and it consists of 4 tall concrete pillars. I knew what it looked like, but I didn't know it said pillars, and it's just strange how I said he's a pillar of the community.
And he's stays a pillar.
So I want to give some credit to a TikTok user named Zetu, and spell it ZETHUZETHU, and she did a story on the Cradock 4. Well, like I said, I was really ashamed not knowing any of this. Yeah. But also, the same breath, why aren't we being taught this in school?
Like, very important. And also, these were black men who were good people, intelligent, doing things for the community. Why are their names not everywhere? They should be what all black people are aspiring to, and everyone, not just black people, but especially in that culture, and that there are people you should be aspiring to be like.
I agree.
So why
didn't they get justice? Why do they not deserve justice?
Yeah, or even just for their story to be heard.
Exactly.
Like, I've never heard of them ever.
But by all means, I feel like everyone should go and Google them and read up, because this is a summary of everything. I try to most of my notes came from Wikipedia, which my university would be ashamed. But I didn't just use Wikipedia. I used a bunch of other articles, but Wikipedia just kind of set it out really nicely with the early life and the history and the activism and stuff like that. So there are definitely videos, a lot of videos out there that I would recommend watching. And it's how many years later, and there's still no justice. There's also a recent article that came out in 2021. I think it's 36 years later, still no justice for all the Cradock 4. And since, like I said, many of their family members have passed on, and they could never see justice being served for the men in their lives.
The fathers, the brothers, they were people who mattered. They clearly had a huge impact on the people around them. So it's sad.
Shame on you.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So are these people the ones whose names do you know if they're still alive? It's 36 years, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I can't remember whose wife recently passed away. I think it was either Fort or Matthew's wife recently passed. And then obviously a lot of their older family members have also since passed. But there's one, I watched an interview with one of, with one of their kids, with one of their sons. It was some radio interview, but he's continuing to fight for his dad, for his dad, and the justice that should be served. And
the killers, are they?
No, nothing's been done.
No, but are they alive?
I think so. I think some of them also have passed on, because they were not quite old. They were older.
Established in their career.
Yes, I think I did read some of them had passed on. Some of them, I feel like one has cancer. I don't know. I can't remember.
It's also ridiculous. You'd release the names of people, but then not take it further than that. Like, what's naming them going to do?
Exactly.
Like, that's not punishment.
No.
that's like, okay, you're calling them out, but it's probably got swept under the rug so quickly. You murdered someone. You took
an innocent woman.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter what they did before that. In that moment, you took someone's innocent life. If it wasn't self-defense, and you're murdering someone, you're murdering an innocent person.
Yeah. And, yeah, just because what they threatened you politically, like,
no.
Ridiculous.
You were wrong anyway.
Yeah. Ah, well, that was
sad.
Yeah, that's really sad. It really just like to think of what they could have accomplished if just given more of a chance.
They were so young still. And they started so young with that. Yeah, that's what really stood out to me, is how young they were when they saw that what was being done isn't fair.
Yeah.
And that if they're not going to change it, who is?
And to stand up as a child, to stand up against an oppressive government.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's so brave. I'm going to get mine. I was making the bed. Luna was on the windowsill. Well, on the window. I can't see Pandy or Nix anyway. I just started rearranging the sheets. They were there because they're like, you need to make the bed with me. Because then I like, they go under the sheets and they go under the blankets. But like, I wasn't even making a sound, and they knew.
They knew it. This is not the time you make the bed.
So I did these notes, like Friday, I think. So like 5 days ago. And then there's an episode of And That's Why We Drink. And Em actually covered one of these stories. So I got some of my stuff from there. So then I took some of the information and I put it in there, so it's somewhere in there, probably in the wrong place. But we'll see when we get there.
I can't even remember them covering that.
Yeah, the thing is, I remember listening to the story, and I remember thinking it's so ridiculous. And then it was like a few days later, I started doing the research for this. And then, like, I just did one last search to look for more information. And I saw the story, and as I started reading, I was like, wait a minute.
This is...
Yeah, and so...
did they not mention that it's in South Africa?
Most of this is from Wikipedia.
Okay.
Just because, like you said, they lay it out so well.
Yeah.
They've literally laid it out in dates, like when it happened. You know, I was like, why not? Some of it I'm just going to quote directly because there's no way for me to just reword it. Yes. Like, there's no point as well. There's just all the facts. Because basically these are all UFO sightings and encounters in South Africa that have been recorded. I know like, a lot of the search results was about that UFO visitation in Zimbabwe with the school children.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's Zimbabwe, it's not South Africa. And also, I think we all know about that, so I thought, let me just stick to this, and maybe we can cover that, at a later stage. But basically, these are just entire lists of recorded sightings. So, we'll start in 1914.
Oh.
So, between 11 August and 9 September, people in different parts of the country saw what they thought was a nighttime monoplane, which is a fixed-wing aircraft or single main wing. Example, like it to have a land or Spitfire, which is what's in my dad Porno. Yes. They went to the
Why is there so much?
I know.
So many my dad Porno references. Yes, connection.
So some people saw the headlights, while some people say they saw it doing sophisticated maneuvers. This occurred in the weeks leading up to the Southwest Africa campaign during the First World War. So some thought that it was a hostile German monoplane or a spy. So this is a UFO because it's unidentified and it was flying. So it's like a true UFO. It's like a flying object. We don't know what it is. It could have been a German monoplane. It could have been an alien.
Yeah.
But that was 1914. 1960s, Mr. D. Clotter from PE, Port Elizabeth, he saw a noiseless, cigar-shaped silver UFO when he was traveling home at around 20 to 6 in the evening. He said it had no visible or clear way that it was being propelled. That said, it was moving towards the east when it accelerated suddenly and then disappeared. And that's always what grosses me out, is when they're noiseless.
Yeah, and they just disappear.
Yeah.
Or they fly like horizontally and then vertically, and then they just like change the direction so quickly.
Yeah.
Or in the hover.
Okay. In the 1970s, this is the next section. 26th of June, and that's also what I like about this, they've got times and dates and stuff in there, It's so cool. So 26th June 1972, Benny Smith, an owner of a Braeside farm, which is around Fort Beaufort in the Eastern Cape, claims he fired shots at an unknown flying object that morning. At 9 a.m., Ruth de Klerk, who was one of the laborers, noticed a fireball of just under 1 meter moving at around treetop height. So Smith, the farm owner, he fired at it and hit it around 8 times, but apparently it had no effect on it. It just made the craft sort of hide a little bit and do some like sneaky moves. At 10 a.m., a whole hour later, so this thing was there for an hour, Police Sergeant Pitt Kitching and Police Station Commander P.R. van Rensburg arrived and also shot at this object. So it was there for like an hour, but just floating. It was said to be a gunmetal color and was oval-shaped. So Smith shot 2 last shots from around 15 meters away, and the object quickly lifted off into the dense woods and was heard crashing into the undergrowth. It was apparently last seen around noon by Smith, but then he heard of it that night, or heard it. 6 council members of Port Burford said that they had watched the object through binoculars, and the craft allegedly left an imprint in the ground. So like 9 imprints, but it was like 333.
Like a stand.
Yeah, so like it's tripod stand. Then, in the 1990s, it starts on the 7th of April 1991 at 11:15 p.m. in Ballianspoort, Pretoria. A family saw a triangle-shaped craft with a little red light hovering. It apparently had white star-like lights on each of its extremities. And in the evenings of the 8th and 9th of April, which is now 3 days in a row, in nearby Eerstrust Township, a similar craft was spotted, either just hovering in place or was seen moving. So 3 days in a row in like neighboring areas it was seen. Then, 2 years later, at 10:15 p.m., 18th November 1993, in Sasolburg, Meesters, Du Plessis, and Venter, don't know what Meesters is. It's Messrs, then it's Du Plessis and Venter. So I don't know if that's like a couple or...
Oh, I don't know, maybe it's an old Afrikaans.
I don't know. Du Plessis and Venter saw a craft coming from the direction of Vereniging, and they are in Sasolburg, so I don't know if somebody was.
Oh.
Yeah. It departed towards Paris, but then reappeared around 3 minutes later. Apparently similar in appearance to a water droplet, it then changed its shape and color.
What?
So it's like a teardroppy.
And then it changed shape.
Yeah.
And color.
Mm-hmm. And then as time passed, individual lights were seen, and then it was cigar-shaped, which seems to be the standard shape.
Oh.
Yeah. So it kind of just went from a teardrop to just...
That's not the first time I heard like a UFOs.
More from the shapes. Yeah. Then the next year, September and October 1994, a farmer in Warrenton said he'd observed a noisy craft that travelled at great speeds during the night, apparently besides what he described as a mothership. He said that the sound was like a helicopter or a VW Beetle engine, which, I mean, we've heard Volkswagens. They sound like freaking tractors. Yeah. His claims were supported by 4 other observers who apparently had nothing to do with him, but people who he didn't know, they all corroborated. 2 years later, this is a direct quote. At 4 a.m. on 28 August 1996, a glowing disc was videoed by on-duty Sergeant Nico Stander of the Adrian Vlok Police Station, Pretoria. A Pretoria resident, Johan Becker, noticed it hovering over Erasmus Kloof. The pulsating disc contained a red triangle and at one point emitted bright green tentacles.
Oh.
Chase ensued involving some 200 policemen and a BO-105 police chopper piloted by Superintendent Fred Viljoen. The chopper with 5 officers took to the air at 5:30 a.m. and spotted the object over Mamelodi. Viljoen was in contact with radar operators at AFB Waterkloof, who reported radar clutter in its vicinity. While pursued by the chopper, it performed vertical and horizontal undulating movement while outpacing the chopper at maximum speed, some 270 kilometers an hour. The chase was given up at 10,000 feet, or 3,000 meters in the Cullinan area. When the fuel ran low, an object made a vertical ascent. An object was sighted in the area again during the early hours of 31 August and 1 September. So, tentacles. And then it's like moving up and down.
I've never heard of tentacles.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
That's why I just had to direct quote that, because how do you paraphrase that? Yeah. All of that is important. And then in July 1997, which is the next year, in Trigard, Mpumalanga, Andreas Matthias filmed a hovering cylindrical shiny cloud or light. 3 other people saw the same thing around 7 a.m. The light is said to have dropped suddenly and then risen before disappearing. Allegedly, Sasol 2 and 3 had temporary power outages that morning.
Oh.
So, the fact that 2 big places like that were affected.
Yeah. But it also feels like a lot of these sightings were in less populated.
Yes, that's what I was thinking as well, very inland. And then The next year, just 27 December 1998, in the Clotter, a family got a video of a group of rounded triangular crafts passing over the town. The crafts were said to change color and circle each other, and were then overtaken by a bigger, shiny gold color craft. Then at 3:24 a.m. on the 8th of May 2000, like, why are you awake at that time? Police Inspector Keel said he saw an approaching UFO as he was on the N3 freeway, which is around 70 kilometers north of Warden in the eastern Free State province. It was said to be wide enough to cover up to 4 lanes of the freeway. When the craft was approached closely, it disappeared.
Ew. Oh no. Wow. Imagine you're driving on the highway.
Yeah.
And you see that. I think I might crash my car.
Yeah, and it's like 3 in the morning. There's probably not very many people out there, and you see this craft.
I would be pretty sure then. Like, I'd be sure this is the moment I'm being abducted.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're in the 21st century. So the 27th of June 2004, in Durban, Roshni Naidu saw and videoed a light that was very bright and colourful near her home for around 3 hours. It apparently also changed shape from circle to oval. So it's amazing how it stays for so long.
Yeah, and I can't get over the more thing.
Yeah.
What even is that technology?
Yeah. How?
Like, my little brain can't wrap itself around that.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy.
What happens inside of the craft when that happens? Does the room stay the same? Do the rooms shift?
Is everyone liquid?
Maybe they have a really little moon boots. Or maybe they've evolved to have really heavy feet.
Oh my god.
Let's just keep them grounded.
I'm gonna have such weird dreams tonight. Why are we recording this so late? Okay. This is worse than demons. I don't know,
Oh no, I'm very happy to speak about aliens. They can come and get me, it's fine.
No, thank you. You heard her, not me.
Yeah, please. Fucking take me back.
It's 2009, which is not that long ago. And that's when I was finishing school.
Wow.
In 2009, between Middelburg and Witbank, 2 formations of flying red or orange objects were seen by many people, and some took videos. The 2 towns were 25 kilometers apart, so this thing was seen in that space between those 2 towns. These were observed at 9:51, 27th of February, and at 8 p.m., the 6th of March. So 7 objects were seen in that time. Apparently, the second time they were seen, there was more of them, so around 23. So they went from 7 to 23 between that time in February and March. So it's like they sent a few, and then they sent a whole lot more. So the evening of the 21st and 22nd of July in 2010 in Boysons, Pretoria, people saw a triangle shape of bright lights which just hovered in place for around 2 hours. Both times the object was seen slowly descending towards the horizon at around 8:30 p.m. Someone who viewed it through binoculars said it was just an emerald and blue light with a white light which shone straight downwards. So that's also a trend, like the cigar shape and the triangle, and then coming night after night kind of thing as well. Then again in the evening on the 11th, 20th and 21st of May in 2011, Tierpoort near Pretoria, a number of silent orange lights were seen as they travelled faster than a passenger plane.
Oh my god.
The 15th of June, the same sort of UFO was seen again. They were going single file this time. At 10 p.m. on the 30th of October 2011, near the town of Harrismith, Mr. van Renen took photos of 2 of the 5, quote, silent fireballs he saw going southwards.
Maybe that's recent.
Yeah, and there's gaps in between, but it happens quite often. Then in November 2015, in Presbytery, Pietermaritzburg, also I haven't heard of any of these towns.
No, I've heard of Parijs.
And Clotter, that's all. I don't know where they are. Yeah.
But
yeah,
a lot of these places are like, where?
Yeah. Like Presbytery, I've never heard of that. So 2 residents saw an orange orb and got a blurry photo. So the last one. 9:30, 12th of December 2016, in Jeffreys Bay, a captain and a co-pilot of a Boeing 737 cargo plane saw a green glowing object go past the cockpit. So they said that this light got to around 300 meters above the plane before going back downwards. So they just saw this green light. Yeah.
Oh, that gave me goosebumps.
So now I'm going to tell you the story that M from And That's How We Drink told. But I got most of this from Wikipedia, and then I got some of the things from them. And I'm sure when I say it, you'll probably remember. This is the story of Elizabeth Klarer. So she was born on the 1st of July 1910 in Mooi River, Natal, and she died the 9th of February 1994. She was a South African woman who said she had been contacted by aliens numerous times during the period of 1954 and 1963. Quote, she was one of the first women to claim a sexual relationship with an extraterrestrial.
Oh, I remember this story.
She wrote, Beyond the Light Barrier, where she tried to convey the message that there should be peace and love and understanding between humans and this race of aliens known as the Venusians. So these people, or these Venusians, they come from Venus. I'll talk about them later. I don't know where in my notes I put it.
People. What are they called?
Venusians. Like Venus. Yes. So, Elizabeth said that the first visit she had was when she was 7 years old. Her sister Barbara was said to have been with her at that time. They said to have seen a silver disc-shaped craft that had a pearly luster which swooped down over them. At the same time, they said they saw a large reddish-orange cratered planetoid which was orbiting and rotating high up. The disk apparently seemed to be rushing to meet up or catch up with this planet, and the planet left a smoke trail as it moved. So, months later, she claimed to see another craft, and this time she was with Ladam, their Zulu farm manager. And I just realized it's Adam with an L in front of it. Yeah, the Zulu farm manager. Okay. So, in 1954, her sister, who was now staying in the Natal Midlands, told her that the native Zulu people had been reporting seeing the lightning bird in the sky. So I didn't know what that was. The lightning bird, or Impundulo, or Tekwane, is a creature in the folklore of the tribes of South Africa, including the Pondo, the Zulu, and the Xhosa. The Impundulo, which translates as lightning bird, takes the form of a black and white bird the size of a person, which is said to summon thunder and lightning with its wings and talons. It is a vampiric creature associated with witchcraft, often the servant or familiar of a witch or witch doctor, which attacks the witch's enemies. It is also said to have an insatiable appetite for blood. Sometimes it takes the form of a beautiful young man who seduces women, which sounds very much like a Tokolosh.
Yay!
Just a flying bird one. Because the Tokolosh also was like insatiable sexual appetite, ate people's feet, blood. So, drank milk.
The fact that the bird is a beautiful person. I hate that.
But there are some very small people.
It's still, like, even a bird the size of a small bird.
Have you heard of ostriches and emus? I'm sorry about that laugh. After Elizabeth heard about this lightning bird, she took her children and travelled from Joburg to the farm in Natal. She went up Flying Saucer Hill the next day, which was December 27th.
How ironic.
Yeah, I don't know if it was named this like after all of this or if it was before, because that would be very... She claimed that she saw the starship descend while she was up there. The craft seemed to hover around 3 meters above the ground and made a soft humming noise. The central dome of the ship stayed still while the hull was spinning. Quote, the spaceman who later identified himself as Akon was supposedly clearly visible through one of 3 portholes, but a barrier of heat that emanated from the ship prevented her from approaching, and a scout ship departed again. So, there were more reports of the lightning bird just over a year later, so she went back there. This was the 7th of April in 1996. And this time, Akon took her aboard his scout ship, which was around 80 meters in diameter. There was a second pilot on board who was shortish and darker skinned than Akon. Akon was a botanist and an astrophysicist. There was a lens in the floor of the ship, which he later looked through. This craft they were in took them to a huge cigar-shaped mothership, and it had a garden-like interior. When I read that, I was like, Chanelle would like that. She met the beings on the mothership and was then returned to the hilltop. Quote, during the encounter, kisses were exchanged, and Akon revealed that Elizabeth was in fact a reincarnated Venusian and long-lost soulmate. He further explained that they occasionally took Earth women as partners, as the offspring strengthened their race with an infusion of new blood. He also claimed that a number of Venusians were surreptitiously living among human beings. The 30th of April 1956, from around 5:45 in the evening, some people noticed a red glow at a rocky section of the hill. It stayed there until around 2 a.m., which is a long-ass time, because that was like 6 p.m. till 2 a.m.
Jeez.
And there were no signs of a fire afterward, because people thought, maybe fire, but they looked and there was no sign of that. Then, July 17th in 1956, their family farm had been sold, and Elizabeth made a visit to the area afterwards, and she claimed that she took 7 photos of Akon's ship. Flashes of light turned into a grey craft that was surrounded by heat. The disc darted near by the farmhouse for around an hour, and it was silent this time.
They just guarded their own house.
Yeah, for like an hour. So in April 1958, a series of contacts reportedly started that set her story apart from the UFO stories that were standard in the 1950s. The visits by Akon culminated in a day-long rendezvous. Rendezvous. There it is. I'm so sorry. I completely forgot that word exists. I was like, that's so French, rendezvous.
I thought you just had a tongue.
I can't read anymore.
Je ne sais quoi.
The visits by Akon culminated in a day-long rendezvous with Elizabeth on the high plateau of Cathkin Peak, where he supposedly presented her with a silver ring, which enhanced their telepathic connection. Their love was consummated, and a child was conceived. Quote, I surrendered in ecstasy to the magic of his lovemaking. Our bodies merging in magnetic union as the divine essence of our spirits became one. Yeah. After a terrestrial pregnancy, she and her MG car were transported in 1959 to Akon's home planet, Meton.
She went with the car.
The MG went with her.
The car was like, I'm not leaving this fucking car here. Do you know how much this cost me?
Akon's home planet, Meton, is supposedly orbiting Proxima Centauri in the nearby multiple star system Alpha Centauri.
Sorry, I can't get over the car. Is she going to drive into the fucking shit? Or is she going to be the only person with a human car?
Aiden's probably like, what is this?
Yeah.
Ancient technology. So there she delivered a son who was given the name Ailing, which...
Really? Ailing? So that's so close to alien.
Oh, I didn't even think that. Christine said, well, one knows he was a bit sickly. Was Ailing? But it's Ayling. He stayed behind on Meton to be educated, while Elizabeth reluctantly went home. Meton's planetary vibrations supposedly affected her heart, and she was consequently not permitted to return there, instead receiving follow-up visits from Akon and Aileen. The whole trip, delivery and return trip, supposedly required less than 4 months, sufficiently long to enable a 9-year stay on Meton. So she was gone for 4 years of Earth, but she was gone for 9 years.
4 months.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
It was 4 months that she was apparently gone from Earth, but she was away for 9 years. So she stayed there for quite some time. If her heart was being affected, that was a long time to stay there.
Just die there. At that point. No, but honestly, just die there.
I suppose.
What's the point of coming back here? Especially if your child's not coming back with you. Everyone's going to think you're fucking nuts.
Yeah, I suppose.
Your car's there. How's she going to drive around here? Can't rely on public transport.
You don't know what the aliens have.
No, ours.
Oh.
Her car's there. If it affected her heart, how is it going to affect the car?
True.
The fact that she put the car
I know.
bothers me.
So there were no cities or skyscrapers as Earth people know them anywhere on Meton. Homes were scattered in park-like grounds, which just sounds like a trailer park. But okay.
I was picturing like nature and there's small houses everywhere, but everyone has a big backyard and stuff like that.
Okay, that makes more sense. There was abundance.
That sounds like a joke. Oh, that sounds nice.
Maybe she needed a car for the trailer park.
That is the problem. Everyone lives so far away from each other. She had to drive. You can walk.
There was an abundance of all things needed by civilization: food, water, and all materials for building, an unlimited supply of energy on tap from the atmosphere and the universe. No shortages. No shortages of any kind, and no monetary systems at all.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Elizabeth took far more time before publishing a book, Beyond the Light Barrier, in 1980, about her extraterrestrial adventures. On his world lecture tour in the late 1950s, George Adamaski made a point of visiting South Africa and looking up Klarer for a chat on their variety of experiences with the friendly, wise Space Brothers. By that time, Elizabeth was not the only Adamaski follower to experience claimed space motherhood. So later in life, Elizabeth returned from Natal to Joburg. She worked in a bookstore but found city life stifling. From the 1950s, people loved writing and reporting about her and her alleged alien lover and baby story. They made fun of her, but she said it didn't matter and it was worth it if people heard his story because he had like this. His story was so important and people needed to hear it because like it was like this, almost like he was a messiah and this like message, you know.
That's weird.
Yeah. The This is a quote. The account of her observations and contact experience in Flying Saucer Review of November to December 1956 was noticed by Edith Nicholson. Nicholson's correspondence with Elizabeth consists of 22 letters written from 1956 to 1976. She published the Klarer story in a small booklet, I Reimskip of Drakensberg, in 1959. I think that might be Dutch. And a second edition appeared in 1967. How that book had two editions is beyond me. From about 1960 to 1966. From about 1960 to 1966, Elizabeth worked on the manuscript of her book, which now included the Akon love saga, as she couldn't, quote, hide the truth in these matters. In 1968, Elizabeth agreed to be interviewed by ufologist Cynthia Hind, and Hind's write-up of her story appeared in Fate magazine of August that year. Ufologist Kitty Smith established contact with Elizabeth after reading about her in Outspan magazine, and claimed her own sighting of Akon's ship in January 1984. Another SA woman, Anne Grevler, said that she had an alien contact in the late 1950s. And then it seems like Elizabeth was like, no, you didn't, and like challenged her. And so she like challenged her to this like public open forum so she can kind of like defend her claims.
Okay.
So it was, yeah.
Aren't you being a hypocrite?
Yeah.
Did you want people to believe you? Why do you invalidate someone else's
experience exactly.
if they say that?
Yeah.
Or had?
And then she also denounced Philip Human's alleged contact through a trance medium, which caused their friendship and relationship to sour. She claimed that the space people wouldn't, quote, stoop to methods like that. Not going into trance.
Does she know all this space people?
Mm-hmm. Apparently so.
Just because you have one baby. Baby alien daddy. Baby daddy? Baby alien. No, it's not baby alien. Baby and baby daddy.
In 1975, she was invited by Hermann Albert to attend the 11th International Congress of UFO Research Groups in Wiesbaden, Germany. She delivered an address there on the 2nd of November, for which she received a standing ovation. In May 92, Smith arranged a talk by Elizabeth at the Unified Flying Object Club in Pietermaritzburg. This was so popular that the crowd grew too large to cope with.
Jeez.
Yeah. She would commemorate the 7th of April anniversary of the union she had with Akon by visiting Flying Saucer Hill. On one occasion, she befriended SAAF helicopter pilots who sought shelter on the farm during the storm, and they facilitated visits to the hill when a ride on horseback became too difficult for her. Her third husband, Aubrey Fielding, died in 1981, and his ashes were strewn on the hill. So I remember Ellen and Kristin were like, that's kind of like, because now the ashes of your actual husband are where you had this encounter with your alien lands.
Oh,
you know?
that is strange.
Kind of like, so Elizabeth died of breast cancer at age 84, which left her second book, The Gravity File, unfinished. The book filled in the gaps of the first, besides elucidating the military and political aspects of the UFO research and explaining Akon's electrogravity propulsion theory. Before her death, she related to acquaintances that Ailing, like Akon, was now an astrophysicist who was crisscrossing the universe with his father, his spacewoman Clea, and their son. Akon, yes, this is part of what M covered, it's just very brief. But Akon's from Mekon, which is originally from Venus, but they had to move to Mekon when Venus became uninhabitable. They saw each other in 1956, right? But he had seen her when she was like 7 years old for the first time.
Yeah.
But they only got together when she was like 40. Apparently.
Okay.
So he was watching her for a really long time. She was apparently reincarnated. Mm-hmm. She was his soulmate from before, and then was reincarnated.
So he's just kept taps on her.
Yeah.
Because
later. Yeah. She said, he had the most compelling, hypnotic eyes. I ran straight into his arms, and he said to me, this time you're not afraid, are you? I know, gross.
Oh.
And apparently there's a whole PDF that you can find that M got that I didn't have time to find. But it was basically Elizabeth telling the story of her and Akon, and it's got all the quotes and the stuff in.
Oh, that's probably wild.
Yeah, this is one of those quotes. So this is Elizabeth quoting Akon. So she's saying what he said to her. Beloved one, I shall be with you always, Akon softly replied. Our destiny is bound together. The telepathic link binds our souls in eternal love. Our lives are entwined as a thread of gold weaves a pattern in the sky. Gently he put his hand under my chin, tilting my head up and back and looked deep into my eyes. My love, my life, my chosen mate, I will return to possess you and sow the seed of my love within your delicate body. The mark of my child will remain within your soul forever. Which is...
Why is he alive? She's been reincarnated into this past life or this new life.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's true. Like, what's their lifespan? Mm-hmm. Especially since their time seems to be like 4 months here, 9 years there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was Elizabeth Klarer. I didn't know about that. But yeah, apparently there's been a lot of alien sightings here.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised at how many there are, or there have been. I wonder if there's any like 2021.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I imagined it. When I was studying in Durban, and I also lived there, and I was driving home from college the one day, and close to where I lived, like I had never really driven around the neighborhood. It was always, home and college and like nowhere in between. And so, kind of close to my house, I saw this like pink thing, this flying thing in the sky. So, but it was like a pinkish light color, and I just saw it, and I was, this is weird. And I drove after it. Like, I just drove towards it. Like, never driven, I just had to drive after this thing and find it. And it felt like it almost noticed I was following it. Because it started moving, like, faster in the way. And it eventually just, like, went so far that there was no more road. Like, it went away. And then I was, like, 3 blocks away from my house. Like, I didn't know, like, where am I? But yeah, then it disappeared, like it flew away.
That's scary.
Yeah. So then I just went home and I was like, did I imagine that? Like, why would I drive my car?
Yes.
That's not something I would do. And I went to college, so I wasn't like, on anything, you know? And yeah, so it wasn't also like, I just woke up, I was half asleep. Like, I was driving my car in the afternoon. Yeah. That was weird.
That was a good, I really like that story.
Yeah.
Great story. Great episode.
Yeah, I mean, it was a longer one, but yeah, once I start covering the stories that I know stuff about, it's going to be really long.
Because I can't really foresee my research getting less, unless I do a small case.
Yeah. But then again, you also don't want to skimp on information when it comes to a crime story, because you want to do justice for people involved. Yeah. And also, people that listen to us, we're on Spotify, so you can put it on 1.2 speed. There's some podcasts I listen to where it's like an hour and a half that's an episode. I put it on 1.2 speed, and it goes quick. Yeah, it's quicker, so you don't have to listen to it at standard speed. I listen to it and tell your friends about it. And we're on Instagram and Facebook at Law and Omen. Our website.
Okay.
Our website is lawandOmen.com.
And my email is info@lawandOmen.com.
Yeah. Yeah, you can find us there, and we're gonna maybe try and get into more platforms. But
and if you can that would be great.
Yeah, rate us if you liked it.
If you have any feedback, you can pop us an email.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, we like telling you these stories.
Yeah, and we hope you have a great week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Love you all.